On a quiet morning in Dar es Salaam, a mother gives her children something she calls extraordinary. This single act ends in death, sparking a case that would grip the nation. Was she a cold-blooded murderer or a desperate victim? Today we unravel the tragic story of Agnes Doris Liundi. Their story began in 1967. Agnes marries George Liundi, a union that, on the surface, seemed perfect. In the eyes of their community, they were building an ideal family. At first things were okay, and they were blessed with 4 children. But behind closed doors, cracks began to show, the home filled with suspicion and bitter fights. Her husband, George, accused her of being unfaithful. This eroded Agnes's confidence, leaving her with intense fear and insecurity. She felt lonely and completely dependent on him, a vulnerability rooted in the scars of her own difficult childhood. The breaking point came on the morning of the 21st of February 1978. After a furious argument, her husband delivered a cruel ultimatum. If he returned home and found her there, she'll be thrown out naked. With 4 children at home, this was a sentence of utter ruin. Feeling desperate and trapped, she leaves the house. She walks to a nearby shop with a terrible resolve and buys 2 bottles of a potent insecticide. She returns home, holding what she believes is her only way out. On that fateful day, Agnes Doris Liundi gathered her 4 young children into the master bedroom. With a chilling finality, she turned the key in the lock. The children, sensing the strange gravity, asked, "Where are we going, Mama?" Her reply was cryptic. "We're traveling, but we don't know where." What followed was a heartbreaking ritual. She kissed each child, and they shook hands for a safe journey. Then she poured them each a glass of orange squash, a familiar treat now laced with deadly insecticide. After serving her children this deadly cocktail, she drank some herself. The poison acted quickly. Soon the children were racked with violent vomiting and pain. As their cries filled the room, household staff tried to intervene. But Agnes was resolute. She physically blocked the telephone, refusing to let anyone call for a doctor as her children died before her eyes. The commotion grew too loud for the locked door to contain. Alarmed neighbors broke in, discovering a scene of horror. They frantically rushed the children to the hospital, but it was too late for 3 of them. In a cruel twist of fate, Agnes and 1 child survived, leaving a nation asking why. The case of Agnes Doris Liundi proceeded to the High Court of Tanzania. The air in the courtroom was thick with anticipation as Agnes stood in the dock. The charge was read, murder, contrary to Section 196 of the Penal Code. In 1970s Tanzania, the penalty was death. Her legal team's only recourse was a defense of insanity, a complex and difficult path. They argued that while Agnes knew she was administering poison, her profound mental illness, born from a lifetime of suffering, meant she couldn't comprehend that her actions were morally wrong. The defense's key witness, psychiatrist Dr. Hall, testified that her tormented mind existed in a different reality, one where this act was a twisted form of mercy, not malice. Her entire tragic history, the abuse, the poverty, the desperation, was laid bare for the court to consider, painting a picture of a woman who had reached her absolute breaking point. The court was asked to look beyond the act and into the mind of the accused, but the prosecution held a devastating piece of evidence written by Agnes herself. On the day of the tragedy, she had penned 4 letters. In them, she tried to explain her actions, pleading, "Don't punish my husband, he was innocent." She revealed her motive. "I did this because I don't want my children to suffer like I did." For the prosecution, this was a confession not of motive, but of sanity. They argued that her concern for her husband proved she understood the concept of punishment, and therefore the wrongfulness of her crime. Her own words became the primary weapon against her. Ultimately, the trial court sided with the prosecution. Agnes was found guilty and sentenced to death. Her case was escalated to the Court of Appeal of Tanzania, her final hope. The appellate judges were faced with a difficult choice: the expert opinion of a psychiatrist versus the defendant's own words. In a judicial system, and a society still grappling with the complexities of mental health, the tangible evidence of the letters proved more persuasive. They concluded that her writings demonstrated a clear understanding of her actions and their consequences. The appeal was dismissed. The death sentence was upheld, a grim finality for a life marked by so much pain. Agnes's case leaves us with haunting questions. How can a legal system measure the breaking point of a human soul? Was the law, in its rigid application, truly just? Today, concepts like complex post-traumatic stress disorder and severe postpartum psychosis might have framed the entire discussion differently, perhaps leading to a hospital, not a death sentence. The verdict was legal, but was it right? The story of Agnes Doris Liundi is a dark chapter in Tanzanian history, a story that sits at the intersection of crime, culture, and mental health. To explore more true crime stories from Africa and beyond, subscribe and hit the notification bell. And I want to hear from you in the comments. Was justice served for Agnes Liundi, or was this a final preventable tragedy in a life full of them?